Thank you, Kate, and good morning. I'm so glad you're here with us today. I'm Nikki Henderson, a staff writer and researcher at GovCIO Media and Research. I will be moderating a fireside chat on risk analysis and incident response. Well, we all know every second counts when responding to a cyber incident, and tools such as automation and machine learning are proving to be quite valuable for agencies trying to increase incident response times and better identify potential risks. Rob Thorne, the CISO at U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, joins me to talk about how agencies can employ automation and machine learning in cyber incident reporting, and also how it could help them recognize vulnerabilities in a more timely and efficient manner. Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Nikki.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Well, we will go ahead and kick off our conversation. So, Rob, I'll start by asking you this. What role does automation play in ICE's overall cybersecurity mission?
Yeah, so automation is, and it's going to continue to be a driving factor going forward. When I look at the ICE cybersecurity strategy, automation is front and center. When you look at the latest attacks and the sophistication that the adversaries are using, you can't do anything, or I shouldn't say you can't do anything. You can't be successful without implementing some sort of automation. I mean, there's such a large amount of event log data that we're collecting, and to have to go through that without automation, you're just not going to be able to stay ahead of the adversary. When we look at our cybersecurity tasks, we look at them and we say, okay, is this something that's repetitive? Is this something that's time consuming? Is this something that's simple? And if we can check the box in those areas, we say, hey, this is a process that we need to look into automating, whether we use a bot or whether we look at investing in another tool or capability. The goal is to reduce the load that we have on our already burdened staff. We want to make certain that they can focus on those risky events that we really want them to focus on. So when we look at some of the automation that we're already have in place, from a patch management perspective, hey, what patches can we automatically apply and which ones do we need to test? When we look at our scanning capabilities, okay, every 3 days we're scanning our environment. Can we implement workflow in that? And the answer is yes. And we've done that where we can run our scans. We've already tagged our systems, so we can have a ticket automatically generated that pushes the finding to those individuals that are responsible for the remediation efforts. And then we can start to track remediation, all automated. Of course, when we're talking about security incident response, you stated that in your opening comments, speed is of the utmost importance. And we do have some robust capabilities from an incident response capabilities, that we've automated quite a bit there. So you can do a lot with automation. And if we look forward to FY23 and 24, of course, all federal organizations are going to be making a big push to continue their journey towards zero trust. And automation is going to be key in those areas. So when you look at different areas, your identity and access management, your ability to allow people or individuals access to resources, but you can make automated decisions on what resources they have access to based on context. What IPs are they coming from? Are they using a different browser? Are they located in a different part of the US or the world that they're normally not located in? And then once you make those decisions, you can make automated decisions based on, what privileges they may have within those resources. The use of containerization is going to be very important. Let's use those developers as security personnel. We'll allow them to run scans and then to correct, issues that pop up. We're going to allow them to pull down libraries, but we want them to check to make sure they're the latest libraries and that they don't have vulnerabilities. Much easier to do it up front than on the backside. And then, of course, you want to be able to automate your software and asset discovery. Now I'm not just saying run a report to say, hey, I have 42,000 assets in my environment. I want to be able to have visibility into those assets when they're on the network, so then I can respond from an incident response perspective. And then finally, another area we've got to focus on is to automate the risk management framework. So NIST has OSCAL, the open security, got to remember all these acronyms, control assessment language, which is going to help us tremendously going forward. But we've got to look at ways that we can automate and reduce those cycles and push out systems at the speed of mission. So yeah, automation is here. You've got to implement it. There's a lot of different possibilities out there. You've got to make it a priority. We've especially got to do that if we want to stay on top of the adversary and those sophisticated attacks that we're seeing.
All right. I agree with that, Rob. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to stick with automation here. I wanted to ask you, how is ICE utilizing automation in the agency's cyber incident reporting priorities?
Yeah, so yeah, as I alluded to in the beginning, we absolutely use automation within our incident response process. You know, when I look at incident response in Rob's world, and the reality is it's cybersecurity world, you know, your ability to detect, respond, and then, you know, recover from attacks and breaches is very important. That's that speed that you brought up earlier. You know, the goal here is to reduce impact to data and the mission. You know, so when I talk to my team, we often talk about the attack life cycle, and of course, you want to respond up front versus respond, you know, towards the end of that, where you get data exfiltration. But the reality is if you do have a breach, you have to be able to respond quickly and recover, and that's where the automation piece comes in. So every organization should have already, if not, they should be looking into implementing a security orchestration, automation, and response capability, a SOAR product of some sort. What that'll do for you is it'll help, of course, reduce false positives and fatigue. What I mean by fatigue is such a large amount of data that we've got coming in, you've got to be able to parse that out so you can look at the most risky alerts up front, and you don't have those analysts constantly looking through streams of data. Fatigue is a reality, and we have to deal with that you know, going forward. The other thing a SOAR product will help do is to stay ahead of attacks and reduce your exposure, which I talked about earlier. And then the other thing it does, which is really important, is it effectively will integrate people, process, and your security infrastructure to be more effective and efficient. It's kind of interesting when you talk about the orchestration piece, which is actually integrating your different tools that you've got, your SIM, your scanning results, your EDR capability, and being able to pull the information together. About 5 years ago, I went out to the West Coast. We have an East and a West Coast presence with our SOC, and I sat down with an analyst. And I love to do that because I like to see, you know, hey, are tools working as expected? Are you getting what you need to be successful? And I sat down with him, and he was walking through a potential incident that he was working, and he had to cut and paste and log into different systems and move things around and pull data to then kind of create a story. And I said, oh my goodness, I can't believe you guys are doing that. You guys should have brought this to my attention sooner. So that's when we started our journey to implement a SOAR product. So, you know, it paid off in dividends. I mean, those guys thanked me tremendously. Of course, it's something that they had wanted previously. But the other thing you got to do with a SOAR product is to look at the playbooks and create your playbooks so you can automate response better. Not only that, but you've got to test. What I mean by that is scenarios. Last quarter, we do quarterly scenarios. Last one we did was ransomware. We've done that one previously, but what we're doing is polishing our playbooks, making sure that we can respond and recover quickly if we do get hit with ransomware. Two other areas I want to touch on here really quickly, Nikki. Data streaming platform. What that is it's your ability to capture, store, and manage data. So you say, well, Rob, you've got a SIM. Isn't that where you capture data? Well, what we're looking into is a data streaming platform to reduce some of the noise. You know, we went overnight from collecting 1.2 terabytes of data a day to over 7 terabytes of data. That's a lot of data that we're collecting. And so the data streaming platform, what it will do is act like a bus. The data will come in and we can say, okay, this type of data we want to send to an S3 bucket. This sort of data we want to send over here for this team. And this sort of data we can send to our SOC analysts. And so they're getting a smaller amount of data, but it'll be more actionable data. So we're investing heavily in a data streaming platform. And then finally, threat intelligence platform. This is a must as well. So that's the ability to collect and collaborate intelligence or correlate intelligence from different sources. And you can pull this together and it makes it much more actionable. You can quickly see where you may be vulnerable. You can see where you have your threat actor profiles and your malware profiles. And then you can quickly create and assign countermeasures to that.
Okay, wow. Well, it seems like ICE is taking a lot of proactive measures, which of course will save you a lot of time and money down the road. So that's really good to hear. Rob, how vital is automation and machine learning when it comes to detecting threats and identifying vulnerabilities within ICE's security posture?
Yeah, so machine learning is, and it's going to play a huge, prominent role going forward. I wanted to comment briefly. You had mentioned, proactively approaching things. That's absolutely right. The automation piece itself will save time and money. Of course, the large amount of data, you still got to have the human element on the back end to catch that. But if we can make it easy for them, it's good. And so you're exactly right when you make that statement. Getting back to machine learning. So yes, machine learning is playing a role, and I think it'll be more prominent in the next 2 to 3 years going forward. So again, the threat actors more sophisticated. They continue adjust their tactics and techniques. Really, what they're doing is they want to evade traditional, our traditional security controls, and they've been able to do that recently. So, their goal is to go around those perimeter controls, get into the network, and then take advantage of vulnerabilities. So, when you look at our traditional security controls, we're often reactive. Hey, let's run IOCs, indicators of compromise, to see if we can see malware in the environment, or we can see IPs that may suggest that we've been targeted. You continue to look at the security tools we use, and it's changing, but a lot of them are rules-based. So when you say rules-based, I mean, okay, we're going to do a whitelist versus a blacklist. It's very yes or no, and you've got to maintain those lists. So this is really a very rigid approach to security. It's needed, though. I'm not saying we're going to get rid of it, but utilizing machine learning is going to add a whole new element to that, because machine learning is going to allow us to see patterns from the data. We're going to be able to model the relationship between the pattern and identify new cases, or based on similar ones that we know. So often what we see with attackers is they'll create malware and other tactics, but they'll build upon previous exploitations. And so this is an area where machine learning can definitely help us to see those patterns, and then we can respond in a quicker way. When you look at machine learning, it will take time to get set up, but it requires less maintenance than rules will. So for example, rules-based, I've got to constantly be adjusting and tweaking the rules, whereas with machine learning, I don't have to do that. It'll help provide some automated decision-making for me. So on that note, this year, we actually did some proof of concept with some machine learning capabilities looking at our event log data. And so what we found out from that, our lessons learned, is it's not just an out-of-the-box solution. I think we kind of knew that going forward, but we didn't realize the amount of tweaking and adjustment that you have to do working with the data scientists, looking at the algorithms. The other thing we found out was it's very important that you have a very robust data set. But some of the challenges we found is, because we're collecting so much information on a daily basis, you've really got to develop your architecture to support the ingest of all of that data. So if you've got a really sound architecture that can process a large amount of data, you're in good shape. We had to adjust that midstream as we started to try to process some of the data. And then finally, I think it's important as you start your machine learning journey, and I'll use that term in a sense, that you've got to look at your data sets. Are we collecting the right data? Is this information going to give us the results that we think it should be giving us in the end? So on that note, machine learning, it's starting to provide value. I think there's still some areas where it's maturing, at least from a cybersecurity perspective, but it's going to play a prominent role. And we should be investing in this area. And definitely at ICE, we are investing in machine learning.
Okay. Excuse me. Great. Well, you were talking just a minute ago about seeing the patterns of the malicious actors, which of course helps the agency stay a step ahead of them. And that moves us into our next question. What is ICE doing to increase its visibility of threats targeting its critical infrastructure?
Yeah, good question. So I talked briefly before on your second question when you talked about incident response, where we talked about the intelligence platform. So that's one area that we're definitely helping us with our visibility. The second area, or I should say there's multiple pieces to this, but we've invested heavily in our cyber threat intelligence team, our threat hunting team, as well as our penetration testing team. We had already started this prior to SolarWinds, but we definitely accelerated, once SolarWinds hit, and we haven't looked back. So we've got our CTI team using our threat intelligence platform. What they're doing is producing a lot of intelligence reports. So this helps us get a threat condition. It can help us make decisions on where we may want to invest or where we may want to pivot. It helps us prioritize activities. So I can work closely with my leadership, the CIO, and we can make some very rapid decisions based on the intelligence that we're receiving from our CTI team. Of course, our threat hunting team, they're constantly going in, looking at hypotheses and looking to see if we've got actors active within our environment. And then lastly, talking about our penetration testing team, where this has really paid dividends for us. So they're continuously running campaigns. Last year, what we did for the first year is normally when we had campaigns, we would do, one rules of engagement for each campaign. We actually do an annual rules of engagement now, which means everything is open to the pen testers. They have access to anything and everything on the environment, which is very important for us to pivot quickly. So a great example would be the ESXi attacks that we saw last week. So our threat intelligence team was able to pull down intelligence very quickly. We can provide that to our pen testing team, who then were able to actively start to test whether, what was the threat level to ICE. So they would start, of course, externally. Hey, how can we get into the environment? And then, hey, if we can't get in, let's airlift them into another spot. If they're at this spot, what can they do to exploit the issues that we are seeing with the hypervisors? So that's the value of having that rules of engagement. They can just quickly pivot and move and work much more quickly. Of course, we do both red and blue teaming. I guess you can call it purple teaming. But anyway, the SOC has gotten a lot of good information from the pen test team and able to tweak and adjust our tools. And then lastly, deception technology is a way to have greater visibility with our threats. So flipping the scenario, actors got to get it 100% right all the time versus the defensive people, my team, getting it right 100% of the time. What these deception technologies do for us is provide adversary profiling, improve our threat intelligence, and that way we can monitor the attacker a little bit more. But it also enables us to detect sophisticated attacks. So these are attacks that may have bypassed traditional threat detection and prevention controls.
Okay, great, Rob. You were saying or talking about working with different teams within ICE to help with the visibility of these threats. Well, how does ICE work with DHS and other partners like CISA as far as detecting vulnerabilities and incident response?
Yeah, so of course, everyone knows CISA provides the government and industry-wide information. We participate in CISA programs. So for example, CISA, conducts biweekly scans of our external facing IP space. We also are heavily involved with the CISA KEV program, known exploited vulnerabilities. This is a great program because what it does is CISA does all the back-end intelligence work for us and says, okay, hey, these adversaries are targeting federal government and they're using these vulnerabilities that are known. So that's a great program for us. Of course, there are some challenges there because you can't, fix everything all at once, but it's excellent information, and we've seen some really good results from that program. From a DHS perspective, so we work with and through DHS, our Network Operations Security Center, when there's attacks or breaches. The great synergy there is often if we have incidents, I've gone up, my team has gone up to support DHS versus DHS coming down and supporting us as well. So any incidents we have, we work and coordinate through the DHS NOSC, and we've got a great working partnership with that team.
Okay, great. Well, Rob, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but this was definitely a great discussion. I want to know, is there anything you would like a final or closing comment that you'd like to share before we end?
Well, I'll just reiterate and summarize. Automation is key to keeping up with the sophisticated attacks that we're seeing, and anyone and everyone who's involved in security should be looking at that and making it a priority.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for highlighting how automation and machine learning are helping agencies to better identify those vulnerabilities and putting them in position to respond quicker, so to cut back on the devastation. So thank you so much, Rob. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Nikki.
Now we will have closing remarks from GovCIO Media and Research President, Michael Hoffman.